Okay, let's take a look at chapter 20 homework. And we want to start with the drill sheet. So before we do the Ross translation exercises, there's the drill sheet. There is an answer key to the drill sheet on my website. So make sure that you use that to check yourself. But are there any questions? I can work through any of these problems with you. Okay, so the sixth one, is it the sixth one from the top?
Yeah.
Very top? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yes.
F code. Okay.
And my question was, in the book, Ross said that sometimes the cohortative can be without the "a" on the end.
Mm-hmm.
So could that be both the imperfect and the cohortative?
Right now, no. Let's assume that we're going to see a comment hey for the cohortative. There are some verbs that end with a hey, which are weak, where the cohortative form will not allow it to add a comment hey, but we just haven't met that one yet. All right, good. Let's compare number 6 to number 9 here, okay? You see F code. Everybody say that with me. F code. And then number 9, F kada. We have the same 3 root letters in both of these, don't we? Pei kof dalet. Pei kof dalet. We have the same prefix. Prefix aleph. Prefix aleph. The one distinction is the comment hey on the back, right? So these should be parsed identically except for one difference. Yeah, the conjugation pattern. The gender, number, person, that's 1CS, 1CS, right? Which one of these is the imperfect and which of them is the cohortative? Number 6 is imperfect. Good. Number 9 is cohortative. Good. And so what's the translation value going to be for 6? I will appoint. We'll just abbreviate that. And then number 9. Yeah. May I or let me appoint. Okay. All right. Good. Anybody else have a question about these? Absolutely. You'll notice that these forms are likewise identical to each other. Tif code, tif code. One is preceded by all, one preceded by low. What do they both mean? Not, exactly. So they are negated forms. So if you notice, the prefix tav on both with no ending on the back end could actually be 2 different things, couldn't it? So let's go ahead and we'll divide our boxes here. And well, actually, for the conjugation pattern, we don't need to do that. It's the person, gender, number. That could be 2. So what is one possibility for TIF code, for person, gender, number marking?
3FS.
Could be 3FS and also 2MS, right? And over here, it's the same. It could be 3FS or 2MS. So that means that the subject is either, if it's 3FS, she, and if it's 2MS, you. Okay, so we're going to have to consider both of those as possibilities for both translations. All right, now let's talk about whether it's imperfect or something else. When I have all as a negative particle in front of a verb, what can you tell me about the verbal form? All negates what kind of verbal forms? Volitional ones. Okay, all negates volitional forms. Low, on the other hand, negates non-volitional forms. All right, so since TIF code and TIF code are identical, one's the jussive and one's the imperfect. And the question is, which one? So all goes in front of which one? The jussive. And lo goes in front of the imperfect. All right? Or as I like to say, all always goes in front of the jussive if the two forms are identical. Okay, great. Now, so assuming a jussive and knowing now with the all that it is in number 7, what would be the translation of the third feminine singular jussive? How would I render that? That's right. Let her not, remember we're negating, so let her not appoint. And if it's 2ms, it's okay. It could be may you not, right? Or simply don't appoint. All right, and we're going to talk about that translation compared to the imperfect here in just a second. Assuming it's the third feminine singular imperfect, how would I translate that as an imperfect compared to a jussive? She will not. Good. So it's just a statement of fact. There's no volition involved in this, right? And then if it's 2ms imperfect with lo in front of it, it's, that's right. It could be either you will not appoint as a matter of fact, right? But then getting back to comparing it with the do not or don't appoint, if it's a prohibition using the imperfect, yeah, we might say something like you shall not appoint. So let's talk about those two differences, don't appoint versus you shall not appoint. Both of those are second person prohibitions, where I would have liked to have just said don't and use the imperative, right? But in Hebrew, I can't put negative particles in front of the imperative form. As I mentioned the other day, when we've chopped off the head, we don't want to go further and give them the indignity of telling them what not to do. Okay? So, bad enough to chop off the head. So you can't put a negative particle in front of the imperative. You have to switch to the prefix form of the jussive or the imperfect in the second person. And you have to pick the right form depending on what you're wanting to say. So when I have all plus a second person jussive, what kind of prohibition is that? This is a more immediate, specific prohibition. My children are going, say, out with their friends on a group date. I'm going to give some instructions. Don't drink and drive. Don't get into a car with a drunk person. Don't give your phone number out to some crazy woman. Okay? But if they're not going out and we're sitting at home doing family devotions and I'm just warning my children and trying to help them see, look, here are some paths of life to take, generally speaking, then I would use not all plus the jussive, but lo plus the imperfect second person. Okay? Don't give your name out to strangers, right? As a general prohibition. So, or you shall not do that. So anyhow, typically I will translate negated jussives, so prohibitions with the second person jussive, as don't do something, and the imperfect second person with lo in front of it as a prohibition as you shall not do something, just to help you see the semantic difference between the two. Yes?
So it's not necessarily that the lo plus the imperfect is a stronger command. It's just a more
it's a more generic prohibition, right? That is a great question. Let me zoom in here to highlight what you're asking here about the dagesh. So you notice number 7, the tav has a dagesh, and in number 8, the tav does not. Why is that? Well, what would cause a dagesh lene to go away? A vowel before it. Notice that with all, the lamed is closing that syllable, so that vowel is shielded right from the tav. Over here, lo has an aleph in closing position, and aleph is a lousy closer. And it'll quiesce. We're not pronouncing it, so the holum comes right before the top. That's why. Very perceptive. All right. Are we done with these? I'll do another one if you want. Did you notice that number 5 has a couple of answers? If code. That could be which two? Cal, imperfect, or jussive, because most of the time these are identical to each other. And they're both going to be 3MS even if I pick one of these or the other. Yeah, the context is going to be what helps you distinguish these two then, since the form is the same. Now, so when you're telling somebody what not to do, the all versus the low will always enable you to know the difference. But when you're being positive, you can't tell the difference. So you positively can't tell. So now, if it's an imperfect 3MS, how will you translate that? He will appoint. If it's a 3MS jussive, how will you translate if code? May he appoint or let him appoint. Yep, good. Number 11, the last one, has all yifkadu. So you can tell me whether that's an imperfect or a jussive, can't you? Which one is it? Oh, you didn't even hesitate. That's good. That's good. All right. Yeah. So, and since this is not second person, this is not the prohibition that is the immediate prohibition compared to the low plus the imperfect second person. This is a third person jussive. So we're saying just let he or may, or excuse me, let them or may they not do such and such. By the way, I haven't tried to study this out, but my guess is that when you have third person jussives, those are probably in the nature of the case more immediate things, because you're not really going to make some generic negated third person jussive statement unless it's something that you want done in a particular context or immediately, right?
Can you command the third person?
Well, yeah, now those semantics are interesting, aren't they? But yes, you can, okay? So it happens as early as chapter 1 of Genesis. Vayomer Adonai, and God said, let light be. It's a third person jussive with or light as the subject.
So number 11, sir, how do you translate that then? Let them not appoint or
yes.
Not let them appoint?
It's let them not appoint. Let them not appoint. So F kada, number 9? Mm-hmm.
On the book, it's listed as I will appoint or let me appoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so over here, one of the two translation values I've given, neither of them are the one that you mentioned, right? So comparing that to this one, I will appoint, okay? I thought about doing this, but I didn't, but I should have. This could also be translated as I will appoint. Okay, and notice that I've put this in all caps, right? I'll put some red bling around it too. Okay, but that's a really strong will. I will appoint. Can I just show you one place in the Hebrew Bible where there is a form that looks jussive? Not everybody agrees that it's jussive, but if it is jussive, it's really interesting. Let me pull it up. Okay, so in Genesis 22, God has called Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, his son. I can only imagine what that's like. I've not read it, but I understand that Kierkegaard wrote an interesting, reflection on this. I forget what it's called, Fear and Trembling, where he talks about this. But anyhow, so Abram, early in the morning, saddles up everything, and they go. And it says here on the third day, verse 4, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Verse 5, then Abraham said to his young men, and this is what I want to point out to you, Shavu lachem po, sit or stay, you guys, here, im hachamor, with the donkey, va'ani, what's that? V'hana'ar, and the young boy, so I and the young boy, nelecha ad ko. This is from the verb halach, with the prefix nun, and a kametze at the end. And I and the boy, this looks like a cohortative form, doesn't it? So is it just an imperfect that happens to have a kametze? Or is this really a first common plural cohortative? And if it is, does it have any of the cohortative semantics? I have supposed that if we take it as a cohortative, then this is really a strengthened affirmation on Abraham's part that they will come back, because that's what he's saying. We will come ad ko, up to here, meaning we're going to go and we're going to come back to this place. Interesting. We will come back. He's on his way to sacrifice Isaac, but he says we will come back. What does that mean? Well, the book of Hebrews reflects on this, and the writers suggest that Abraham had faith in God, that even if he carried through with this, then God is the God of resurrection and could bring him back. So I just think that's interesting, right? And there's some exegetical importance to how you answer the question of how to analyze that verb form. Okay? So there you go. Little exegetical tidbit for the day.
So the way it is translated in ESV is imperfect?
Well, you can't tell, right? It's just I and the boy will go over there and worship. And where is it? V'nashuva alechem, and we will return. This is the other Hebrew verb. They're both cohortative in form. V'nashuva, nun, kametze. We will return to you. So we will go and we will return. Why is he saying we? It's just the two of them, right? So I take it that if this is cohortative, he is expressing a strong will or desire for them both to come back.
So are we also saying, sir, that sometimes we lose those in the English translation?
Yeah, well, it's really hard to see the cohortative form in just the will go and come, right? It's how you pronounce the will if you're going to use will as your translation. And I would suggest that saying may we go and may we come back doesn't really get across the idea, right? I think this is affirmation of his will or desire. Okay. So here is the chapter 20 material for the translation exercises. Which specific ones shall we discuss?
Section A, sir?
Oh, did I have you do section A?
1 through 10.
I did.
Just the yeah.
Oh, I didn't photocopy that here. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so what was your question?
Okay, sir, on like the word seek.
Mm-hmm.
I know darash is to seek.
Right.
But when I checked myself, it said derosh.
Yes. Right. Darash is the cow perfect, which means he saw it, right? But what you're being told is to create a form out of darash that makes it imperative, right? Because you're commanding someone to seek. You're not saying he did seek as a statement of fact. You're saying seek, i.e., I want you to seek. Okay? So what you have to do is you have to take the root letters of darash and you have to apply the vowel pointing of the cal imperative. What's that look like? If you go back to our cal imperative, our volitional verb forms, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to just switch out the letters pe, kof, and dalet for the vowel, the consonants for seek, darash, but you're going to use the same vowel points. Vocal shava under root 1 and holum for root 2 if it's a U masculine singular. And that's what we're being asked to do. So it's going to be dalet with a vocal shava and rosh with a holum. Okay? So de rosh. De rosh. So that's telling you, singular, masculine, seek. Okay? So de rosh. Mm-hmm.
In one example before, I think the holum and the dot of the shin is kind of combined.
Yes, you could write this as one dot. That would also be okay. So yeah, so maybe like that. Derosh. Okay. So does that make sense, Yvonne?
Yes.
You just need to make sure that for whatever form you're doing, if you learn the forms of pakad in those verb forms, then when they give you a different verb meaning, then you need to use the different root letters, but the same vowel points. Does anybody have any other questions on the A section? Number 3 was do not break the vessels. Do not break. We got to figure out the verb for break, which is what? Shavar. Okay. And we're saying do not break. Now, when he uses do not as opposed to you shall not or thou shalt not, he's giving a prohibition using what? The jussive. Okay. So I need to use the negative particle that can go with the jussive, which will be what? All. So I'm going to say all. And then I have to make sure that my jussive here is a 2FS, right? Do not break is a command to a you that's feminine singular as he specifies. So which prefix do I use for that? Tav, good. And is there a suffix for 2FS? There is. It's a kirik yod. So what are my vowel points on the inside? I want a kirik, I class always under the nutty prefixes, and then silent shava under root 1. And then normally I'd have a holum here, but since I've got a vocalic ending stealing the resh away, and the stress goes to the end, this is open and pretonic, and it will reduce to a vocal shava. So it's all tish, and I need a dagish lani there. All tishbari. All tishbari. Silent shava, the bet needs a dagish lani. So do not break. Do not break. And then the vessels is one of your vocab words. Ha, ke, lim. I think it's a dagish lene or dagish forte in that lamed when that becomes pluralized. No, it does get a seri, but there's no dagesh here. Hakelim. Okay, now this is a definite, and it's the direct object. So I would also expect, 8, the sign of the accusative in front of that. Either with the seri or with the segol and the makef. Either of those are acceptable.
number one, you would use it as well?
Um, yeah. Let me see. Seek the Lord. Yes. Seek et Adonai. Yeah, because Adonai is a proper noun, therefore Adonai is definite. So I would see et or et, and then hayom is today. Hayom. Okay. Other questions? All right. Okay, so on the A section, number 7, let me judge between the man and the servant. So this is a first person, let me judge. So who's doing the judging? Me. So I need to use a first person form. When I say let me judge, am I using the imperfect or the cohortative? Cohortative, right? Okay, so what's judge? Shafat. Okay. By the way, how many of you know the story of Eli and his sons in the book of 1 Samuel? Eli had bad sons, right? What does the text tell us about Eli's physical appearance? He was heavy. He was heavy. And so I remember one Hebrew professor talking about how to remember the word shafat means judge, because Eli lived during the time of the judges, and he was shofat, right? So there you go. All right. So we want to say, let me judge. So is me first common singular or first common plural? First common singular. So I'm going to use which prefix? Aleph. Good. And what's my suffix, or do I have one for the cohortative? Yeah, I want a comma te, don't I? So remember, in the imperative, we cut off the head. In the cohortative, we add a tail, right? We add a comma te at the end. So, and then I add my vowel pointing, which should be esh. Should be eshpot, but when I add the comma te, what happens to the holum? It goes to vocal shava. Is pei a begad kafat letter? Is it preceded by a vowel sound? That's a silent shava, right? Two shavas in the middle of a word. The first one's silent, second one's vocal. So it's eshp, eshp. So no vowel sound. So I need my dagesh lene here. Eshpata, eshpata. So let me judge. And then it's between things, right? Between the man and the servant. On my answer key, if I can pull that up here, I've got the forms here. I just want to point out that it is fairly common in Hebrew to repeat the preposition before each of the things that we're talking about being between. So that's not good English. Let me judge between the man and between the servant. Okay? But really we would say bein once in English. Let me judge between the man and the servant.
Is there
Yes.
a reason that bein doesn't lose its dagesh?
The only reason is that I neglected to take it out. Yeah, because this is preceded by a vowel. So yeah, I would expect that dagesh lene to go away. So good catch. Okay. Let's take a look at the translation exercises. So on to these sentences. For number 1, we are going to translate this, pronounce it. Remember, this is a shava in the middle of a word. I look to the right and I see a kirik. Kirik is what? Long or short? Short. Therefore, the shava is silent. So it's lich. Lichdu. Lichdu. By the way, lamed kaf dalet here, there's no prefix, right? So which verb forms have we learned do not have prefixes? Okay, the perfect does not have prefixes. Good. What else? The participle does not have prefixes. And now we've learned the imperative does not have prefixes, right? So what you need to do is you need to remember what is the vowel pointing under root 1 that I might see with these different patterns. In the perfect, what is the most frequent vowel under root 1? Kamet. Remember pa kad, pa kada, pa kata, pa 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 pa, right? So I'm usually looking at that. Sometimes I'll see a vocal shiva when I have the heavy ending. P kad tem, p kad ten. But otherwise it's pa pa pa. For the participle, what is my vowel pointing with root 1? The cal participle. It's a holum. Po kade, right? Po kedet, po kadim, po kadot, po 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 po. Okay? So papa and popo. The imperative, what's my vowel pointing? Vocal shiva, and then if I have a vocalic ending, a Keurig. P code, pick, d, pick, do, and then p code na. So p pick pick p. P pick pick p. All right. So what do I have here? Well, I have the pick kind of vowel pointing, right? The Keurig. So this is the imperative, the cal imperative. When I have the Shurik, which personal ending of the cal imperative is that? That's 2MP, right? So who am I commanding to capture? Y'all, male, you guys. Capture them. Capture them. All right. Notice that in sequence with likdu, an imperative, I have u lekaktem. U lekaktem. Does that look like an imperfect or a perfect type of verb? Which pattern is that using? The prefix or the suffix conjugation pattern? It's using the suffix conjugation. I'm using the perfect personal endings here, right? But notice I have a vav in front of what looks like a perfect. So might it be a WCP with the semantics of the preceding imperative? That is a command, and so the semantics of WCPs will typically follow the first verb in the sequence. So this will be instructional as well. With tem, it's second masculine plural. So lakach is to take. So how will I want to translate this? Capture them and what? And take them. Okay? Do not translate this as a past time action. It doesn't make sense, right? Capture them and you took them. Doesn't make any sense. The WCP form is going to have the non-past semantics of the preceding one, which was the imperative. So capture them and take them. Ha-ira. Now you know that ir never has a comma te under normal conditions. So when you see a comma te where it doesn't normally go, and if the accent's not on that comma te at the end, then what kind of comma te is this? It's the directive or directional one, and it means movement towards whatever it's attached to. So how are you going to translate this? Take them ha-ira to the city. Take them to the city. All right, good. Other questions? Number 2. Look at number 2, nishlaha. Is that a perfect, imperfect, WCI, WCP, imperative? What are we looking at? It's cohortative. How do you know that? Yeah, it's got the first person imperfect form, but with a comma te at the end. So you have to know that shalach is your verb root and noon prefix, comma te suffix. So what's shalach mean? To send. So nishlacha is? Yeah, it's first common plural. So let's send. Oops, there we go. Let's send. Otho? Yeah, this is the direct object marker et with that 3ms pronoun. So let's send him. And then I have habayitha. Habayitha. To the house. There's that directive kamate at the end, right? Because bayit doesn't normally have a kamate. So let's send him to the house. And then I have v'yishkav. Now, is this a WCI? If it were a WCI or a vayiktal form, remember WCI and vayiktal mean the same thing, what would have to be under the vav? A pathak. Vayiktals have va. Va. This is just v, not va. What would also have to be in the yod if it's a vayiktal or a WCI? A doubling dot. I don't have one. So this is not a WCI form. This is just an imperfect or adjective. It's ambiguous with a plain old conjunction vav. Okay? So in terms of parsing this, and this is important for us, so we'd want to, if we're parsing this, spell the root letters out and recognize this is the cow, and it's either imperfect or adjective, and then with the yod in front and no ending, 3ms. Plus, since I'm not calling this a WCI, I have not accounted for the vav yet in my parsing. Then I'm going to put just conjunction vav. Okay? All right. Now, these two verbs are in a sequence together. This one is volitional because it's a cohortative, followed by a simple conjunction vav attached to a prefix conjugation form. What we learned in Ross at the end of that chapter is that when you have a volitional form followed by a prefix form with a simple vav, that this will often have the nuance of purpose. Do the first action so that the second action can happen. So we're going to translate this as, let's send him so that he may rest. Okay? Let us send him to the house so that he may rest. In structures like this, carrying out the second form is really dependent upon the first form that the writer or speaker wants to happening, right? He's not going to rest unless he's in the house. So let's send him to the house so that he may rest. We have a couple more minutes, so are there any other questions you want to look at? Yes?
On number 2, what is the last word?
Oh, sham. That's what? There. It's the opposite of po. Po here, sham there. Po and sham. Okay. You guys are letting Yvonne have all your questions, though. Okay. So shmor. Shmor. Sounds like something great to have around a campfire. Shmores. Okay. So look at that. I have a vocal shava followed by a holum for root 2. What's that look like? That's definitely looking like a cal imperative, right? With no ending, it's 2ms. So what does shmor mean? Keep or guard. And we have to see what's the object before we can sometimes make that choice. So what is the writer or speaker commanding that one keep or guard? Oh, et chatzi hatzon. What's chatzi? Half. Hatzon? The flock. Is this a construct chain? It is. How do I know? Look at that et. Is that the preposition with et, or is that the direct object et? Okay, it's the object marker. What kind of direct objects does it precede? Definite ones. Is chatzi definite? All by itself, it's not. But if I take this as a construct chain, then thing 2's definiteness guarantees thing 1's definiteness, and that's why the et is in front of that one. Okay? So that's one of the things you can think about to help you see that this really goes together as a unit. Half of the flock. Keep half the flock. umacharta. So here I had an imperative as my first verb, followed by, in sequence, a WCP form. I have 3 root letters, no prefix, but I have a perfect suffix for 2ms, right? So that is a WCP, which will carry the nuance of the imperative. Command, so this will have a command kind of semantics. So keep, half, and sell to me 8 hachatzi. What's that? The half. There now it's got the definite article. Sell me the half. Which half? The half the acher is other. Sell me the half the other, meaning sell me the other half. Okay? There you go. Good. Oh, just this will be real quick to do. If you notice number 4 and 5, they are identical in form except for the lo versus the all. So which one is number 4? Is this lo plus the jussive or the imperfect? That's imperfect because lo cannot negate jussives. Okay? All is in front of the same form. This one must be the jussive. How would I translate lo tishbot? You shall not rest as a generic prohibition. All right? But all tishbot, I want to translate that as don't rest. Okay? Don't rest. And notice that this word is giving me the more immediate context of that specific prohibition. Don't rest today. Okay? But here in verse 4, or number 4, bayom hahu could be giving instructions of a perpetual basis, right? Like maybe right before this it talked about the Sabbath day, and then lo tishbot. Well, actually, I guess we wouldn't say lo tishbot, bayom hahu. Maybe Monday. Always go to work on Mondays, right? Lo tishbot bayom hahu. Don't rest on that day, meaning as a matter of course, right? Every week on Mondays, don't rest unless it's President's Day and Labor Day. Okay, good. All right, we'll have a quiz on this on Monday after the weekend.